We have a major update on Mike McDaniel and his future status with the Miami Dolphins because the top ESPN NFL insider, Adam Schefter, the top NFL insider, Ian Rapoport, and then his kind of sidekick, but also insider, Tom Pelissero, all reported different things when it comes to the future of Mike McDaniel in Miami. Is he safe going into 2026? Is he on the hot seat? Is it decided already one way or another? Well, we're going to get into everything on today's show. I am Nick Roloff. We're going to start with Ian Rapoport, who went on NFL Game Day morning on Sunday prior to the Dolphins-Bengals game and said and reported that, barring some sort of surprise, McDaniel's expected next season. This is someone who has the support of owner Stephen Ross. They extended Mike McDaniel prior to the 2024 season. Ross and McDaniel are close, and the organization wants McDaniel to succeed in Miami and believes that he can do this. Now, I want to make something very, very clear. Ian Rapoport has been reporting this all season long. He was the first person to pump the brakes on firing McDaniel earlier in the season when Miami started the year 0-3 and then 1-6. He has always said that Ross wants to keep McDaniel for the long term, believes that he could turn it around, and that Ross would give him the entire year to see if McDaniel can turn the ship around. And I think this is an important lesson for everyone at home. This is not just an Ian Rapoport thing. This is when it comes to Schefter, Pelissero, other NFL insiders. Take note at the history of the reports. Take note at the verbiage that they use, because these guys get these scoops and get these sources for specific reasons. Whether it's coming from a guy inside the Dolphins ownership group, whether it's coming from Mike McDaniel himself, Mike McDaniel's agent. Either way, these insiders get fed these rumors, these reports by credible people making decisions. And to me, based off the reporting that Rapoport has had throughout this year, these reports are coming from McDaniel's agent or himself personally. Like, I do think he's got the ear of Coach McDaniel, so I believe Ian Rapoport is always going to be reporting positive information on Mike McDaniel rather than potential negative. More coming here in a second, but there's a lot of information on today's show. Send it to someone you know so they are an informed Dolphins fan, or share it on social media. If you tag me at Nick_Roloff on Twitter, by the way, I'll give you a shout out on a future video. The reason why I wanted to make that point so harshly is because of the differentiating reports coming in from Adam Schefter, and we'll get to Tom Pelissero here in a second, because Schefter countered Rapoport. Now, I do want to make note, this was on the Pat McAfee show on Monday afternoon, so this came in a day after the blowout loss to Cincinnati rather than right before the game like Ian Rapoport's. But Schefter said that, yeah, people are saying McDaniel is safe, but there hasn't been any decisions made. We'll see how it plays out because nothing has been decided there. And I do find it very fascinating that we are seeing the two best insiders, one on ESPN, one by NFL Network, reporting against each other. Because very rarely do you ultimately see those two report different things. Yeah, some people have the knowledge and direct line to the ownership and general manager. That is where I believe Ian Rapoport is not in. I think Rapoport is more in line with players, coaches, and agents. Yeah, Schefter's got his sources with players and agents, but I think he's more aligned with the front office, with the ownership levels. And that is the nuance of reporting. Like, I think if you follow the NBA as well, it was more clear and evident in that league. Shams Charania was the player reporter. He was the agent reporter. But Adrian Wojnarowski, before he rode off into the sunset, was way more aligned with the front offices. So each insider has their sources in different levels. And I think Schefter is more in line with the front office in ownership. I think Rapoport is more in line with the players, in coaches. Now, do I know that 1,000%? No, but that is where I think I'm leaning when you look at how they report information and the verbiage that is used. But the deciding factor, in my opinion, here on where the future lies with Mike McDaniel, it's the fact that NFL Network insider Pelissero, who reports in lockstep with Ian Rapoport most of the time, said over the weekend, especially after the game against Cincinnati, that nothing has been decided by the Dolphins ownership group. So could the game on Sunday against Cincinnati have swayed the opinion potentially of Ross and the other decision makers? Potentially, but we are seeing a lot of different reports out there on the job security front of Mike McDaniel. And I want to have you guys predict it for me in the comments. Will Mike McDaniel be fired by the Miami Dolphins following the next two games against Tampa Bay and New England in early January? Type F for fire or type K for keep. If I had a gun to my head, I would probably err on the side of caution and incompetence from the ownership group and say he stays. But Mike McDaniel absolutely needs to be fired. To me, the evidence stacking against him is just too much to come over. And when you're resetting everything, Chris Greer being fired midseason, Tua being benched, why stop at the head coach? Why not just go clean slate protocol? Yeah, you're going to have a lot of dead cap, but bring in a new GM. Let that new GM hire his own head coach. Have those two working hand in hand together in the future to replace Tua and build out this roster in a well-constructed way. We know what Mike McDaniel is. He is a 500 coach. You see, after the loss against the Steelers on Monday night and against the Bengals this past Sunday, he now has a career record of 4-16 against teams with a winning record, and teams that are 500 or worse, he's 30-16. So he is more likely than not able to take care of business against bad teams. But when he has to play high-level opponents, it goes south more times than not. And I do not want to settle with mediocrity. I say this all the time on the channel, and I was referring to that when talking about Tua. If you want a head coach to get you 7 wins every year, but never more than 11, and never really be a threat in the playoff race, Mike McDaniel's your guy. If you wanted a quarterback to be in games, be 500, but never win a Super Bowl or meaningful games in the playoffs, Tua's your guy. But I don't want to be a mediocre franchise. We have been that with an inability to win a playoff game for 25 years. There's a better chance to getting to the mountaintop if you just go wipe it clean now and just fully rebuild. I know fans are sick of rebuilding, but it has to happen once again to hopefully finally get it right going into the future. And coming up in just 1 second, I have more evidence that you guys need to see against Mike McDaniel and his potential case to stay here as head coach in 2026. But we are sponsored by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, which means your favorite Prize Picks holiday promotion is back. 7 days of Picksmas. Prize Picks is giving out 7 days of deals all the way through Christmas Day, including a Christmas Day max discount. Picksmas starts December 20th, so download the app and unwrap those deals right now. And your fantasy football season, unless you're in the championship, is likely over. But you don't have to wait until next year's draft. Prize Picks let you play fantasy football every week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit on their projections every week. No draft required. Only 2 weeks left of the regular season. But playoffs are just around the corner as well. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players' stats, like I am doing for the Christmas Day action. More than Dak Prescott passing yards to lead us off. Then in the middle game, we're going more than an Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdowns. And then the nightcap, we're going with a big-time demon play. R.J. Harvey, more than 1.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. We showed this graphic on our Sunday night video as well as a video on Monday. we are the worst third quarter team in the NFL, but we have been a poor second half football team all year long and really under Mike McDaniel for the last 4 seasons. But specifically in 2025, they are 30th in point differential. This was entering the game on Sunday, by the way. And it only got worse because you got outscored by 21, so bump that up to 86 in terms of the point differential and the negatives. You got outgained by 80 in the third quarter against Cincinnati, bump that up to over 800 yards in the negative, and then you got shut out in the third quarter again. You are the least scoring team in the NFL in the third quarter with 27 total points. That is flat out unacceptable. I mean, I know the 15-minute halftime isn't used in the way fans think it is with screaming, yelling, making adjustments. It's more of just kind of take a breather, get hydrated, maybe have a quick snack to refuel for the second half. But what is the coaching staff doing in the during that halftime break to where they consistently get out-coached and outclassed? And maybe some of it's on the players for coming out flat. But when you have that much of a disparity in your third quarter statistics, I get extremely concerned about what is happening with that coaching staff. But it's not just the third quarter and second half embarrassing display. Look at Mike McDaniel's career when trailing at the half. I said it. We've been a bad second half team throughout his entire career. Well, how about when they're going down into the break? They're 4-23. They have no ability under Mike McDaniel to amount comebacks consistently, whether it's a 3-point deficit at the half or a 10-point deficit. And all the people out there that say, oh, we want to see what Mike McDaniel can do without Tua because he has so much physical limitations. Well, without Tua, he's 3-10. And I know you're going to say, well, that's Tim Boyle, Skylar Thompson, I don't know if I already said Boyle, but Boyle, Huntley, Thompson, Quinn Ewers now. I don't really care. That's on Mike McDaniel for not having a backup quarterback that can fit his system. And how about this? In replay challenges, when he throws that red flag, he's 4-21. He's abysmal at everything. I'm sorry, I don't need more time. I don't need to see him with a different quarterback that he handpicked. Get his ass out of here because I don't want him to continue to drive this franchise into the ground. Miami's win total with Mike McDaniel has just went down, down, down. Yeah, they went 9 wins, 11 wins, but then they went down to 8. Now they're going to be down at 6 or 7 this season, depending if they lose out or split the final 2 games of the season. He is not a good head coach. And for the people, once again, that say, okay, he's had a bad roster given to him. Well, you know, he has a lot of say in how the roster is constructed. I know he can't ultimately really get full blame because, yeah, Greer's going to hand out big contracts and make trades, but McDaniel's going to sign off on it. McDaniel signed off on the Tua extension. So, I think he has to get a lot of this blame for the roster construction as well. I think he needs to go if that is not abundantly clear. And we will have you covered every step of the way. And if he is fired, we will go live on the channel. We will have you covered. So hit that sub button for daily Dolphins content. So if Miami does ultimately fire him at the end of the season, we've talked a lot about who could replace him throughout the last couple of months. In all honesty, I'll refresh you on my top 5 list of Mike McDaniel replacements. I think right now I would have Rob Saleh and Vance Joseph, the 49ers and Broncos defensive coordinator, respectively, as my top 2 options. If you wanted to go with a first-time head coach, I would be looking at Jesse Minter, who seems to be potentially the top head coach candidate this cycle when what he's doing in Los Angeles. Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, is certainly enticing. And then you have to also think about a veteran like Mike McCarthy, the ex-Packers, ex-Dallas Cowboys head coach, a Super Bowl winning head coach, and a coach that usually continues to have success in winning seasons, would be able to establish a baseline, a culture in Miami. But if you ask me who is the most likely out of these 5, I think it would be Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator. Why do you ask that? Well, I think he has been showing and displaying over the past couple of years that he deserves another shot to be a head coach after being fired after 2 seasons in Denver. But you also have to remember that Vance Joseph was the Dolphins defensive coordinator back in 2016. And with that being the case, I think Ross would like to have another shot at him because I think Ross liked him a lot. And we've seen other reporters like Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano allude to Vance Joseph potentially being the top option for Miami if they ultimately did move on from Mike McDaniel. I think he would certainly be in my top 3 of options, so I would not complain. I would argue he would be my number 1. I've tossed and turned between Rob Saleh and Vance Joseph as my top Mike McDaniel replacement if they moved on from Mike. But I also think Miami Dolphins fans should keep an eye on John Harbaugh because Baltimore has been kind of stuck in the mud. Ravens fans want Harbaugh gone. And if they want to switch it up after a losing season potentially, as they're 7-8 with 2 weeks to go, and they're likely going to miss the playoffs unless the Steelers somehow lose to the Browns this weekend and then Baltimore beats Pittsburgh in the final week of the year, I think they might switch things up with Harbaugh, with how things have been going over the last 6 to 8 years in Baltimore. I think Stephen Ross would absolutely be interested in him because he's a big name. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach. And let's be honest, even though he has had a rough go of it in Baltimore in the playoffs and over the past couple of years, I think Stephen Ross would think of him as an upgrade. And I do think John Harbaugh is an upgrade over Mike McDaniel. So I would certainly be intrigued with bringing him into Miami if he was on the market. Remember, if you share today's video and tag me at Nick_Roloff, I'll give you a shout out on a future video throughout this week. So go share today's show to help us out, but also follow me at Nick_Roloff.